up with, and I think this is a big one. And is climate change and global warming, when you say climate change, is that essentially the same thing? Because I feel like I've heard them be used in separate terms. Like when someone says global warming, is that the same thing as climate change, or are they kind of different?
Well, they're roughly talking about the same thing because they changed the name because, Al Gore was going hardcore with global warming back whenever he did, what was that, early 2000s, late
Yeah,
90s.
late
And
90s.
so they changed it to climate change because, that the one party, I won't say any names, I'll try not to say any names in this, but the one party, they were really against global warming. So or like, because Al Gore was so crazy. So they kind of rebranded a little bit and was like, all right, here's climate change. Now, it is technically the same thing because, our temperatures are rising right now. I think our average global temperatures raised by like, I think we're at point zero, let me see, I think we pulled up 0.09 Celsius. And so we're trying to limit that a lot. So that's what the Paris Agreement was to do, was to get all these countries together and be like, we have to stop it before it gets above this much warming. But, climate change has a bunch of different factors with like extreme weather. So like, that's why you have like the polar vortex from a few years ago. So it's not just warming, but it's a bunch of different environmental issues that come along with it. So climate change is a better term, but practically global warming is climate change. But I wouldn't say climate change is all just global warming.
Yeah, so you would say it's like embedded into the whole thing as a whole. Because my second question, which you pretty much already answered already, was, do you think it could get more of a following from a certain group of people? Because a lot of times I feel like people just want to rip on it, like global warming, and they just want to focus on the warming part, but not the globe as a whole. And I feel like you answered that. Because I mean, this year alone, how many hurricanes have we had just this year? Like
Probably a couple, I would say probably three.
three or four.
That's pretty embarrassing.
Well, so the one thing with climate change is, and I don't think it actually increases the number of hurricanes, but I believe it increases the intensity of them. So I believe they do get strong. That one thing with that is hurricanes are going to be, on average, you're going to have more category 4s, per year. It's going to seem like you're going to get hit with harder and harder hurricanes every year.
Yeah.
But the one thing I will say, with global warming is a lot of the arguments against, climate change stuff, the people who are deniers, they nitpick every single thing you say, so that's why global warming didn't work out, because it's like, oh, well, it's getting cold. It was colder on average this year than it was last year, something like that. But, that's just weather, and that's not the same thing as climate. Because climate is it's average of weather of over 30 years for, a given area or, specific region. So it's a lot more data than just weather, because weather can change every single day. It could be, like today it's 60, but it's supposed to get like 15 tomorrow and for here in Denver.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you, which was the fact that like there's always this stigma behind the climate change where it's like, oh, the climate always changes throughout the past thousands of years. There's different climates over 100 period time. So I hear that a lot where it's like, okay, well, we're just in a different era. The climate is changing. That's just the regular cycle of the earth. Like I'm not said the argument against that per se, but like that doesn't really make sense to me, in the sense that I've been living on this planet for some 20 years and I've noticed the climate significantly change in a sense where I am right now. I mean, in Florida, growing up, it was probably average 90 degrees, and now it's summertime, 105, feels like 113. I'm like, obviously that has something to do with it, right? Or maybe I'm just sounding like a simp.
No. Well, let's see. I kind of forgot your question there for a second, but whatever. So what I'm just saying is, climate's definitely, we go through cycles. We go through warmings, we go through coolings. We have little ice ages. I'm pretty sure there was an ice age in 1300. There was a little ice age is what they called it. But the difference between now and the climate changing is what is happening is not supposed to naturally happen with some of the environmental factors that we have. Like, desertification, the polar ice caps melting at the rate they are is just not natural. And I believe we're supposed to be in a cooling period right now anyway, over a warming period. And even if there was, we don't have the greenhouse gas amounts that we would if it was just a natural cycle change. Like there's so many other factors going into it than just warming and cooling. And that's the simplification of, you know, climate change and what it is what skews a lot of it.
How much do you think like climate change has been just like politicized in a sense? Because to me, it seems like this shouldn't be like a left versus right, or even a debate in general. This should be like a humans against climate change, you know, but instead we're like picking sides, you know?
Well, it 100% is politicized because, and that is really what the difference is, you know, environmental regulation, like, you know, to be sustainable does not go with capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, and we have one side that's all, you know, hardcore pro free market and capitalism. So, you know, they really try to hardcore, instead of just being like, well, we don't want to screw the economy up or take any chances, they just deny everything else that the other side is saying, which kind of skews a lot of the arguments. But it's just, that is what it is.